Welcome into NFL on 365 Sports. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and today we're going to continue our mock draft session on the YouTube page. Today we're going to talk about the Saints. Obviously, if you want to check out some of the other episodes, there are more on the video timeline. We have a ton of different mock draft content about various teams, but today it's all about the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, a very kind of sad year, I think, for the Saints because it started off so strong. Jameis Winston looked great. They were kind of buzzing, I would say, a little bit that they had a chance to win their division, potentially make a run in the playoffs, and then Jameis got hurt, and that really derailed their entire season. So, looking ahead to the draft, obviously, they're going to be looking to add talent at various positions, but I will say this is already a really good football team that just happens to have a lot of draft capital to make their team that much better. So this is actually a really fun one. They have 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick, so a lot of opportunities here. Obviously, they made a trade with the Eagles, which allowed them to move up in the draft, allowed them to acquire another first-round pick. So they got picks 16, 19, 49, and 98. Those are the 4 picks that we're going to cover today. Talk about some of the options there, as well as who I think they're going to end up taking in the draft. So, starting with pick 16, it's going to be kind of one of those situations where the Saints are going to have to evaluate kind of the targets that are there and also kind of which position they want to address. Now, having a pick 3 picks later makes this kind of a tricky selection, right? Because if you take a guy at 16 and you're hoping that a guy falls to 19, he might not. And so you really have to kind of play the field a little bit. So I think at 16, it's going to be very important for them to address the wide receiver position. Michael Thomas, kind of shaky because of the injuries. We think he'll be back. We think he'll be the old Michael Thomas. But it has been 2 years since we've seen, the really good wide receiver 1 Michael Thomas. And now they're going to have to find a way to help him, as well as make this offense more sustainable and also prepare for a possible future without Michael Thomas as well. So the guy I'm looking at here is Jameson Williams, the wide receiver out of Alabama. He had 1,500 yards this year, 15 touchdowns. He averaged 20 yards per catch. And he's just a guy that when I watch his film, I just go, man, the speed is there, the polish is there. And I just think he could end up being the best wide receiver in this draft class. Currently, for me, that is Garrett Wilson. But on the flip side, Jameson Williams has all the talent in the world. The injury at the end of the year, the torn ACL, is definitely something that is kind of throwing people off of him, which is fair. He's going to miss some of the season. He won't be ready right away. But what we've learned about ACLs over the years is that, frankly, they're easy to recover from. Guys have made, just easy jumps back from injury to playing again within the same season. So I think Jameson Williams this year, within a year timeline, will be just fine. He'll be highly impactful for the Saints, especially down the stretch. And they're getting a guy who could be the future of the franchise at the wide receiver position. Now, because they took Jameson Williams at 16, they're going to have to wait 2 picks. And it's going to be, I think, a very stressful situation for the Saints because there is a guy that I think is a perfect fit for them and also plays a position of need. So in the free agency period, they lost Teron Armstead, who was their left tackle. Now they're going to have to figure out a way to make up for that loss. And I think Trevor Penning, the offensive lineman out of Northern Iowa, is a perfect fit here, not only because I think he's a great tackle prospect, but also because he's been a huge riser throughout the evaluation period. At the Reese's Senior Bowl, he was dominant. You saw plenty of videos, I think, of him throwing guys around and then kind of standing over them and really making his presence felt. But he just looked like a guy that was flat out dominant. And because of that, I think he could be a nice fit for the Saints as they try to rebuild the offensive line, retool the talent around Jameis Winston, and also kind of figure out what life is going to be like without Sean Payton there. So having a tackle who can come in, contribute early, I think could take some pressure off of play calling, Jameis Winston, the run game, the pass game, just everything. And so I think Trevor Penning, if he can fall this far, would be a slam dunk pick for the New Orleans Saints. Moving on to pick 49, the Saints were really good last year in a variety of areas. Defensively, they were really solid, but I think they need more depth, and depth is going to be a key for them. I think, in these later stages of the draft. And looking at pick 49, I think a cornerback would fit really well for what the Saints are trying to build. Give them more depth, more versatility on the back end. And so a guy like Roger McCreary out of Auburn, he's got 6 interceptions over the last 3 years. 5 of those have actually been in the last 2 years. 6 foot, 190 pounds, good length, good size, 29 pass breakups the last 3 years, which is magnificent as well. He's very good in coverage, and he's highly impactful, meaning he makes big plays, whether it's getting his hands on the football, creating interceptions, creating opportunities for turnovers. And when you have a guy like that, it allows you to get the ball back to your offense more efficiently and also take some pressure off the offense when you're able to create turnovers and get stops as a defense. And I think McCreary could be a guy that could come in and play right away for the New Orleans Saints. Moving on to pick 98, and this is more kind of a fun pick, but also a depth pick and kind of hedging your bet a little bit. So you have Jameis Winston, who is an absolute gunslinger, but you haven't been able to open him up because they don't have the talent on the outside. They really became a run-heavy team with Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram last year, and I think they want to get back to being a little more balanced. And without Michael Thomas, that made things tough last year. So they addressed it by taking Jameson Williams at pick 16, at least in this mock. So now let's get some more speed on the outside or on the inside. Really, I think this guy can play many different positions, but the point being, he's an absolute burner. And that's Velus Jones out of Tennessee. And Velus is a guy who had a very solid year this year. He's got a late breakout age, meaning he wasn't great early in his career, but this year it all came together for him as Tennessee finally had a really competent offense. And he had 807 yards and 10 touchdowns this season. And then he goes to the combine and runs a 4.31. Now, when I look at this New Orleans Saints team, I see a team that has a lot of solid options, but all of them pretty much like catching the ball within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, including Michael Thomas. He's an elite route runner, but he doesn't really create huge plays deep downfield. He's more of a first down, move the chains type guy who is always open, and that's a great attribute to have, but they need guys that can extend the field a little bit, and it'll make things a little bit easier for Michael Thomas. I think Velus Jones does that. I think it's also kind of, again, hedging your bet on Jameson Williams is probably going to miss some time, so you need somebody who can come in and create those mismatches early in the season so that you're not way far behind by the time Jameson Williams comes back. So let's talk about some other great fits for this Saints team that maybe they could take instead of some of the guys that I mentioned. You're thinking of Treylon Burks, maybe Drake London if he falls far enough, or Garrett Wilson if he falls far enough. I kind of think London and Wilson will be gone, which is why Jameson Williams is my selection at 16, but Burks could be there. And maybe the Saints get intrigued and go that direction. As we know, Burks, physical freak. I just think Jameson Williams is a little more polished and is probably the better pick. At 19, they could take the Mississippi State offensive lineman, Charles Cross. He's kind of been a big riser. Some people have him inside their top 15 selections. So again, he'd be addressing the tackle position as well. Moving on to kind of the last segment is talking about some of the trade up targets that maybe the Saints have in mind, and they kind of have a lot to plan for going forward. You know, is Jameis Winston your quarterback of the future? I'm not sure. You know, he was good for them, but he also got hurt, and we don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back. So maybe this is the opportunity that Sean Payton says, okay, maybe, well, Sean Payton's not even there anymore, but maybe the new coach comes in, decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to go find my guy, find my quarterback to develop and mold. And so if you kind of look at the landscape of the quarterback situation in this draft, it's not great. So the Saints are going to have to find a way to move inside the top 10, which means they're probably going to have to give up picks 16 and 19 in order to make that happen. The targets there would likely be Kenny Pickett, maybe Malik Willis, who I think is probably the best quarterback in this class. I just don't know if they can move up far enough. But if they do, I suspect it will be for a quarterback, which is something that they desperately have needed since Drew Brees retired. So that's kind of my targets. That's kind of my kind of description of this mock draft for the Saints as far as kind of what they're looking for, what they need to improve upon, and also what they could end up doing in the draft, which is, coming up very, very soon. We're a little over a week away from the NFL draft, and it's becoming a really, really exciting time. And that's it for the Saints. This has been Grayson Gruenhagen on NFL on 365 Sports.